Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, The Black Accountant. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and like, subscribe, and leave a comment of content you want to see going forward. So, I've just kind of been seeing a lot of the talks about education and just kind of seeing a little bit about how education costs are continuing to just go up, 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 and up. And there's just no payoff in the sense that now we're kind of, during this pandemic, just switched to virtual reality, no, virtual learning, and the learning experience isn't as great, but it still costs the same for some reason. When you're providing your own laptop, you're providing your own internet 90% of the time, and you're paying for your textbooks and you're paying for online courses, and this is all information that you could learn on your own. So today I just thought it would be a good idea to kind of talk about some different ways that you can kind of subsidize or lower the cost of your education, if anything. So, uh, so the first way that kind of everybody already knows is to apply for financial aid, right? Applying for financial aid kind of qualifies you for, either if you live in California or certain states, you'll have like a Cal grant or whatever grant from the state. You'll have a Pell grant, which is the federal one. And a lot of times these grants aren't enough to really get you through college. So sometimes you end up having to take out loans. So you want to avoid taking out loans as much as possible. Especially if you don't really have like a stable income or a way to kind of pay that off before a lot of the interest starts to accrue later on when you have to pay it off. Like, say you're a communications major, you really don't want to be taking out loans, especially federal loans, because the interest starts to accrue on them later on down the line when you have to start paying it back. And it's really, really difficult to land a job with a communications major. Yes. So number one would be to apply to scholarships and to apply to grants. So if you don't qualify for financial aid, doesn't necessarily mean you don't qualify for any grants or don't qualify for any scholarships. So a really helpful book that you can kind of look into is the Big Book of Scholarships by 2021. And it's like a book this thick that just has like this list of variety of information on different types of scholarships and grants, and like the requirements for a lot of them aren't even big or don't require necessarily an essay or anything to really apply. Some of them are just, if you're a black male, you qualify for this scholarship. If you're Christian, you qualify for this scholarship. If you're born in like 1993, you qualify for this scholarship. So it just lists a whole lot of different scholarships that are out there, and it's a really good way to kind of just find and bookmark things that you think you'd qualify for to kind of get more and more income to pay for your college. Another another way to kind of just reduce your expenses a little bit is to not buy the textbooks, especially through the shopping cart. Like, let's say you're attending college. A lot of times, or most colleges have their own bookstore on hand. You would think that since it's through the university or through the college that it would be cheaper, but those textbooks can be found for cheaper online, usually through Amazon or through just a random PDF website. So if you can find a free PDF, that's definitely the best way to go. You always want to opt for a PDF. Now, I wouldn't recommend that you rent a textbook, just because even if you rent it, it's typically around the same cost as purchasing it, and you have to take better care of it because at the end of the year, you're going to have to return it back. So I would recommend that you opt for a free PDF. If you can't find that, if you have a group of friends, to just kind of all share the same book, especially if it's an online access. And that's just for if you need to read the textbook. Now, if you have like a course that requires you to have like what's the word I'm looking for? A paid course access, because all of your course assignments are through there, and it also happens to have access to the textbook, then there's not much else that you could do there other than buy it. Another way to kind of go around a bit of the whole college expense overall in terms of tuition is to enroll in community college before you go to university. a lot of times when you're in high school, you're get edged on and like egged on to believe that you need to go directly to a UC or like to a university, or you need to go directly to a 4-year institution to prove that you're smart. Now, that's not necessarily a smart choice unless you're on a full ride scholarship or you can afford to do so and you know what you're doing. Keyword, this last one, know what you want to do. Most of us really don't know what we want to do or have an exact direction of where we want to go. And a university isn't really the greatest place to find that out, because as you spend more and more time there, if you don't decide quickly enough, then you end up having to stay a longer time. Because let's say I was a freshman and I was undecided for 2-3 semesters, and then I decided to become a biology major. Now I need to do the catching up for that major, which is going to probably cost me an extra year, and I might not qualify for grants anymore in that year if I say get financial aid. So now I'm going to have to take out loans. And you don't really want to be doing that, because the more loans that you take out, the longer it's going to take you to repay those. And we don't necessarily know if student loans are going to be forgiven or not. So, also in terms of student loans, if you already do have student loans, there actually are ways to defer the payment. Right now, it's deferred by an executive order until January 31st, 2021. But say a really cheap way of kind of getting out of or just deferring the student loan repayment is to enroll in school. Now, I know that seems a little bit counterintuitive to most people, but what I mean by enroll in school is if you're enrolled in at least 6 units, let's say 6 units, which is typically 2 classes in a community college, then you're enrolled part-time. And if you're enrolled part-time in an accredited college, your student loans get put on hold. So you don't need to be repaying them, especially if you have federal student loans that are subsidized. Then you don't have to pay the interest on those, and you don't have to repay those loans while you're in school. So a good strategy to have is to enroll in 2 classes where you know they're not going to be time consuming for you, especially if you're somebody that works or has a family or has just been out of school for a really long time. Just take 2 classes of something that you're interested in, and while you're working, pay the principal on your student loans. So you don't have to pay them, but since the interest is going to be on hold, and since you no longer have to really pay those loans at that time, it'd be smarter to continue to make payments on them, because now you're just paying the initial balance of the amount that you took out. So you're paying off principal and you're not paying any interest, and you're lowering and lowering your balance a lot faster than if you had waited or if you didn't enroll in school, because you'd be spending most of your payments, especially since most people make minimum payments, is going to be spent on interest. So it's going to take you a solid 10 to 30 years to pay off your student loans, depending on how fast you want to pay them and how big your loans are. But if you enroll in school and consistently stay in school, then you could be paying off the principal and pay off your loans in a matter of like anywhere from as short as 1 year to 5 years, and you could be already out of your student loans. So, another thing altogether, let's say it also depends on what you want to go to school for. So in terms of education, education doesn't necessarily mean you need to go to college. It could also mean that it could also mean you want to go into tech. So a lot of jobs now, especially big tech companies and startups, are starting to shift a little bit away from the degree requirement and looking more towards certification. So if you can get into, like, let's say you're into computer science, if you can get like a Python certification, if you can get an Alteryx, if you could get into Salesforce, if you can get into any like SAP, Oracle, whatever it is, or C++ coding or Java coding, and get certifications in those things and have experience, those things show more for you down the line and cost a lot less than going through the whole college experience and paying for classes that you don't need or won't even teach you an overview of what you need. So those are kind of a few different ways that you can go around the price, or like the heavy price tag of education in this country. If you have any thoughts on that, go ahead and leave those in the comments below. And also comment any kind of different videos that you want to see going free. Also leave a comment of any kind of, go ahead and like, subscribe, and leave a comment of any content you want to see going further in the future. And if you had any thoughts on this topic, go ahead and leave those. I'd love to see that as well.